the resources and the help they need because they're following Donald Trump and Marjorie Taylor Greene stupid down a rabbit hole?
Crazy thing is that Washington Post did a fact check, and it was actually Donald Trump during his administration who is taking money from FEMA.
The witnesses that were on our side, they were literally crucified by this man who looks like an angel, but he's really a devil.
Picture this. It's a dark and stormy night. Marjorie Taylor Greene is huddled over her phone, furiously tweeting about how they control the weather. Meanwhile, Jon Stewart is gearing up for battle, armed with nothing but facts, logic, and a healthy dose of sarcasm. What happens next? Well, let's just say it's going to be a perfect storm of comedy and common sense. You believe that using the thermostat was akin to a power outage? What if politicians had complete power over the weather system? About to be revealed is a conspiracy theory dismantled by Jon Stewart that is so strange that it makes chemtrails appear elementary. Our favorite political humorist, Jon Stewart, was recently left scratching his head after seeing a tweet from Marjorie Taylor Greene. Greene's most recent assertion that hurricanes are being used by Democrats as political weapons. She sounds like she's trying to sell the worst Weather Channel movie plot ever. Let's explore this turbulent circumstance. Greene shared a map on Twitter that coincidentally shows electoral districts and hurricane effect zones. She acts as though she believes Nancy Pelosi's basement contains a massive weather machine for Democrats. This one gave John a field day. He likened it to a reality detached fever dream that would be more fitting in a subpar political thriller. Image cocking hysterically, John hunched over a makeshift control panel, punching buttons marked Category 5 and light drizzle with dramatic effect. Is this how Greene thinks it works? He would inquire, raising his eyebrows in shock. Do they have a team of evil weather scientists working around the clock to manipulate tropical depressions? And this is when the absurdity sets in.
Making this about politics, it is Donald Trump, and it's extremely frustrating. Over 200 Americans have been dead. And
yes, they control the weather. It's ridiculous for anyone to lie and say it can't be done.
Don't you think they might have used it in, I don't know, any of the previous elections? Asks John, pointing out the obvious fault in this conspiracy theory. It's a valid point. Why hold off on causing their meteorological mayhem till now? So let's dissect some actual storm research to show how absurd this idea is. When warm, humid air rises over the ocean, an area of low pressure is created, which is how hurricanes begin. The surrounding air rushes in, warms up, rises, and so on. It's a complicated process that involves atmospheric variables, wind patterns, and ocean temperatures. Not exactly something you can operate with a remote or whip up in a lab. John might show this by swishing around and creating whooshing noises in a kiddie pool with a fan. Observe, it's not that simple, is it? He would ask, appearing frustrated and drenched. If it were this simple, we'd have weather forecasters winning the lottery every week. The problem is that, despite the fact that we're all laughing a lot at Greene's expense, there is a serious aspect to this. This kind of conspiracy theory can have serious repercussions. They undermine faith in established scientific consensus, government agencies, and even fundamental truths. They divert attention from pressing problems that require attention, such as catastrophe preparedness and climate change.
The seas will rise over the next 400 years, 1/8 of an inch, which means basically you have a little more beachfront property, okay?
what he says versus the numerous fact checks that are out there.
It's simple to understand how these theories catch on. They provide people with a sense of control in an unpredictable world and straightforward answers for complicated issues. However, they also distort actual occurrences into fictitious stories, sending people down a misleading rabbit hole. Speaking of B-movie storylines, what if a beloved literary figure traded in his windmill tilting tendencies for a congressional seat? Let me introduce you to Capitol Hill's Don Quixote, Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's fighting made-up weather machines instead of giants and jousting. Our favorite political comedian, Jon Stewart, couldn't help but make this comparison. Imagine him reading Greene's tweets aloud in a theatrical manner while wearing improvised armor, saying things like, "Forsooth, the Democrats doth control the very heaven." Though it's hilarious, there's a serious message underneath all the fun. Greene's vision of weather control is more than a passing joke. It's a part of a bigger trend in American politics that disaster denialism has been seeping in. Do you recall when Trump advocated for California to rake the forests in order to put out wildfires? With a tiny rake and a terrible Trump impression, John could play out that scene. Listen folks, we've got the best rakes, tremendous rakes. You simply rake those woods and presto, not another fire. But this is the point at which the laughter wanes.
Fiery member of Congress struggled mightily as her body rejected the unity theme.
I just don't get it. I mean, in a national tragedy, you love Donald Trump so much that you're going to parrot that kind of crazy out there?
There are actual repercussions to these conspiracy beliefs. They weaken faith in governmental authorities and the consensus of science. Even worse, they divert attention from real problems that should be solved. We have not been discussing actual climate change or disaster preparedness, while we have been busily dispelling weather control myths. Greene and other conspiracy theorists seem to be engaging in a perverse game of look over there. Every time we ought to be devoting ourselves to substantive policy conversations, they make yet another absurd assertion. Before we know it, we're squandering time attempting to refute Nancy Pelosi's claim that she has a hidden weather machine in her basement. The interesting thing is that identifying these similarities can really make it easier for us to identify comparable language in different political discourses. It's similar to having a sixth sense for absurdity. After witnessing a politician accuse others of plotting natural disasters, you can't help but notice similar tactics when they are used by others. So how do we harness this superpower of conspiracy detection? Start by identifying remarkable assertions for which there is insufficient evidence. If someone claims that Democrats have influence over hurricanes, they had best provide some very compelling evidence to support their claim. Second, steer clear of theories that easily fit into preconceived notions about politics. Your suspicion detector should go off if a Republican says that Democrats are manipulating the weather, or if a Democrat says that Republicans are in charge of earthquakes. Imagine for a moment that a vaccine against conspiracy theories could be developed.
The fact that a current member of Congress put something like that out in public, you should be ashamed of yourself, Marjorie.
Now Trump is out there saying that FEMA, they don't have enough money for relief for the victims of the hurricane because they were using that money on undocumented immigrants.
No, not the sort that makes you magnetic with microchips inside of you. I refer to an infallible technique that identifies and halts disinformation in its tracks. Are you ready to grow beyond silliness? A conspiracy buster toolset is exactly what Jon Stewart has for you. Imagine Jon brandishing a ridiculously large magnifying glass with the words fact checker written on it, along with a common sense detector button. With these tools, Jon could remark, you'll be able to spot a conspiracy theory faster than Trump can tweet fake news. But when we can have a game show, why stop at tools? Greetings and welcome to Who Wants to Be a Conspiracy Millionaire, where participants battle to disprove the most outrageous hypotheses. For $1 million, Jon could inquire, is the government controlling the weather, or is that just a bunch of hot air? Bring on the dramatic music and perspiring competitors. Naturally, we must not overlook the true authorities. Jon makes the decision to interview a meteorologist and starts asking ludicrous questions. So doctor, on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely is it that Nancy Pelosi has a weather machine in her basement?
Would you declassify JFK files?
Yeah. I did a lot of it.
Would you declassify the Epstein files?
Yeah.
New this morning, Twitter has permanently banned the personal account of Georgia Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene.
That meteorologist would have a priceless look on his face. The funny thing is, though, that we're learning as well as laughing. These absurd situations are teaching us to doubt wild assertions and trust empirical data. It's similar like feeding veggies to kids unsuspectingly. They're learning without even noticing, not to mention the practical ramifications of these absurd theories. According to Jon, it is extremely frustrating that at a time when so many of our fellow Americans are suffering, these politicians decide to politicize it and promote conspiracy. So when lives are on the line, it's not all fun and games. How therefore do we counteract this false wave? When someone makes an extraordinary claim, you should first always hunt for extraordinary proof to support it. Ask your neighbor to make it rain Skittles if they claim to be able to control the weather. Not a single Skittle, not a belief. Second, steer clear of theories that overtly support political prejudices. It probably did if it sounds like it was taken directly out of a campaign advertisement.
Republicans are not sending their best and brightest to Washington anymore. It is unimaginable to me that at a time when so many of our fellow Americans are suffering.
These aren't the same people that you and I worked with over these many years. I just don't get it. I mean, in a national tragedy,
it's not how real life is like that. Finally, keep in mind that a topic definitely has no place in a serious political discourse if it sounds like a lousy science fiction movie storyline. Weather control belongs solidly in the